we see the cardinals and bishops and archbishops and patriarchs begin the procession from their seats into the Vatican Basilica.
So it's the conclusion of the celebration. As you notice, the celebration concluded with the final commendation, which reminded us, serves as an emotional reminder of our faith in the resurrection and the eternal life promised by Christ. It's not just a moment of goodbye, it is a sacred act of entrusting our beloved Pope Francis into the merciful hands of God. So Cardinal Regna will lead the prayer entrusting Pope Francis to God's care and asking for eternal rest and peace. We sang the Litany of the Saints and we invoked the intercessions of the saints. And we now begin the procession to the Basilica, and then from there the remains of Pope Francis will be taken to his burial place at Maria Maggiore. And of course the prayer which was repeated a number of times during the celebration, we pray for eternal rest and we pray that may the perpetual light shine upon him. And this encapsulates our deepest hope for the deceased Pope Francis, and we ask God to grant him eternal peace and to let his light guide him into his presence. As we see the pallbearers ready to process out of the square into the Basilica. And we join the choir as they sing the Magnificat. Magnificat anima mea Dominum. My soul glorifies the Lord. Words from Luke chapter 1.
My soul glorifies the Lord, and my spirit rejoices in God my Saviour. For he has looked on the humble estate of his servant. For behold, from now on all generations will call me blessed. For he who is mighty has done great things for me, and holy is his name. And his mercy is for those who fear him from generation to generation. He has shown strength with his arm. He has scattered the proud in the thoughts of their hearts. He has brought down the mighty from their thrones, and exalted those of humble estate. He has filled the hungry with good things, and the rich he has sent away empty. He has helped his servant Israel in remembrance of his mercy, as he spoke to our fathers, to Abraham and his offspring forever. With the crowd of over 250,000 people, estimated by the Italian authorities, we hear applause erupt as the coffin of Pope Francis enters St. Peter's Basilica for the last time. As the Requiem Mass concludes for Pope Francis, we transition to this second part of this live broadcast coming to you from St. Peter's Square and Basilica. The coffin of Pope Francis will now be transferred to St. Mary Major's Basilica. We thank our guests who has joined us today. My name is Devin Watkins, Father Bonga Majola.
And it's been a great joy for being with you today, and thank you for having prayed with us. And we will continue then our prayer. Thank you.
Laudetur Jesus Christus. This is Linda Bordoni coming to you from Vatican Radio, Vatican News Studios, together with Francesca Merlo and Thaddeus Jones. We are here for this second part of this solemn day, solemn moment, following the funeral mass for Pope Francis in St. Peter's Square. We will be accompanying you through our city, through the Eternal City, as Pope Francis's body is carried through the beloved streets of Rome to his final resting place, which is the Papal Basilica of Saint Mary Major, chosen by himself to be interred in the earth. A simple pastor in a simple tomb with the simple inscription Franciscus. So we are here waiting to see the images of Pope Francis's coffin, which will be carried on an open-aired hearse. We still have to see it, as the people of Rome are lining the streets to catch a last glimpse and to be able to pay their last respects to their much beloved bishop.
Thank you, Linda, for that introduction here. And for our television viewers, you can see the square and all the crowds there slowly leaving just before the square was totally full of people, and all the main avenue there leading into St. Peter's Square. The authorities estimated over 200,000 and a quarter million people gathered in the square, what the square could hold, and the main avenue, Via della Conciliazione, leading into the square. It's amazing when you look at how these celebrations are handled and how they're able to manage these crowds also on this short notice. And for our viewers and listeners also who've been following, coffin that will be taken from St. Peter's Basilica and then exiting part of the Vatican about 4 to 5 kilometers. And
people that filled the square. So
that will be taken from St. Peter's Basilica and then exiting part of the Vatican about 4 to 5 kilometers. And
people that filled the square. So we were all here quite early this morning, 6 o'clock, and all of these pilgrims, all kinds of people, and all of these pilgrims, all kinds of people.
1,000 and a quarter million people gathered in the square, what the square could hold, and the main avenue, Via della Conciliazione, leading into the square.
St. Peter's Basilica to St. Mary Major, and such a beautiful day.
The straightest
St. Peter's Basilica to St. Mary Major, and such a beautiful day.
The straightest itinerary between St. Peter's Basilica and St. Mary Major. But it crosses Vittorio Emanuele. It will cross the river first and foremost. But it crosses Vittorio Emanuele. It will cross the river first and foremost. It will arrive in Piazza Venezia, where the altar of will be.
Taken from St. Peter's Basilica and then exiting part.
Carried in procession, can we call the Colosseum. He's going to pass in front at behind him of Roman.
The square. So we were all here quite early this morning, 6 o'clock, and all of these pilgrims, all kinds of people, young. A beautiful mass in the end. Trip from St. Peter's Basilica.
The Bishop of Rome's Basilica.
The Diocese of Rome as well, and all.
Between St. Peter's Basilica and St. Mary Major, but it
are going to leave from this area, and throughout this morning, very moving and poignant moments.
it will arrive in Piazza Venezia, where the altar of will be. It will arrive in Piazza Venezia, where the altar of will be.
During this, the liturgy, the Requiem Mass, strong sunshine, and just very strong or powerful symbolic moments, and just very strong or powerful symbolic moments, and chants of their own traditions, part of the chants of their own traditions, part of the we can see here.
We saw Jews, we saw Sikhs, we saw sheiks from Canada. We saw many heads of state. We saw, of course, the College of Cardinals, all General Congress. We saw, of course, the College of Cardinals, all General Congress Basilica.
The Diocese of Rome as well, and all are going to leave from this area. And throughout this morning,
Congregations during this time of sede vacante to the Holy See as
Linda, to the interreligious representation was particularly
the Holy See as
Linda, to the interreligious representation was particularly was amazing. Term also used often, fraternity, as with his this the liturgy, the Requiem Mass, strong sunshine, and just encyclical are shared values, and they will remember that in very strong or powerful symbolic moments and chants of their own traditions. Part of the we can
Yes,
see
we
here.
Saw Jews, we saw Sikhs, we saw sheiks
From Canada.
We saw many heads of state. We saw of course the College of Cardinals, all general congregations that it will drive at about 10 kilometers per hour, so it should take about half an hour to reach St. Mary Major. Perhaps for security reasons, people have been asked not to walk behind it, but they will definitely be lining the streets.
And we've seen some of the images of the entirety of the route.
Amazing term also used often, fraternity, as with his encyclical, our shared values, and they will remember that in a special way.
With this funeral mass and with his request of the peripheries, and the last 12 years, and leaving the Vatican.
Automobile, open, white. It's actually a car that it will drive at about 10 kilometers per hour, so it should take about half an hour to reach St. Mary Major. Perhaps for security reasons, people have been asked not to walk behind it, but they will definitely be lining the streets.
And we've seen some of the images of the entirety of the route that you described earlier. Thousands and thousands of people have taken to the streets to say goodbye for the last time, and of course everyone will be able to visit St. Mary Major and visit Pope Francis's tomb, but this really is, his the day that we are dedicating to him to say goodbye. And Rome, and not only Rome, the faithful have really come out for that.
Very symbolically also, we know that a group of mostly poor people who are assisted by charities will be at St. Mary Major to welcome him to his final resting place. The Pope of the peripheries, the Pope of the people, is very aptly receiving his last embrace from those who he loved the most, the smallest, the weakest, the last in society.
We see the whole entourage there from high above. Now they've just exited Vatican City. They're on the avenue here that leads to a tunnel that then crosses over the Tiber River and will take them into the historic center. People lining the streets there, and we've had plenty of reports of people lining the streets across the city since this morning. So while many were crowded into St. Peter's Square, which had at least around 50,000 until they had to kind of close it off due to the numbers, and then so many hundreds of 150,000 others in the avenues surrounding the area, we have many people as well, in addition, lining the streets or the sidewalks to pay their final respects to Pope Francis and the entourage here, moving at a pace that gives people time to take in the moment as it happens.
And these aerial images that were being shown are they're really quite impressive. They're beautiful. You can see the car carrying the Pope, and then above what I believe to be the Vatican Gardens, the Pope's Gardens, this beautiful green area which I'm sure he must have wandered through so often. And it's beautiful to have them both together as he makes his way to St. Mary Major. There really are a lot of people out there. You can hear the applause as he makes his way down.
You were saying, Francesca, the Vatican Gardens, which he probably walked. I thought it very beautiful that in the Vrogito, the last act, which they placed in his coffin, there was a summary of his life and of who he was and of his pontificate. And in particular, he was described as a simple and popular pastor in his archdiocese in Argentina, who traveled far and wide by metro and by bus, living in a flat, preparing his own food because he felt like a normal person.
And I think he made everyone he met feel like he was a normal person, and that they were meeting a normal person. And the Pope of the Peripheries, that's really what he was. And especially talking about his traveling, and he really traveled the world. His penultimate trip, which Linda, you were on, and he really went to the other side, the forgotten side of the world.
Absolutely. I must say I've had the privilege to be on 2 faraway trips. One was the one you're just mentioning that took us to Indonesia, Timor-Leste, Papua New Guinea, and Singapore, but even the year before to Mongolia to visit the smallest Catholic flock in the world, 1,500 Catholics of the entire Mongolian population. So yes, he traveled into the peripheries of the city, going to visit prisoners, going to visit elderly people, poor people, always welcoming refugees, but he'd also traveled across the world to the remotest and furthest away places from the Vatican, obviously, that is. And people always came out in floods to welcome him. I'll never forget landing in Timor-Leste, which is a tiny and new country, and the half of the entire population, 750,000 people, came to the Mass. The floods of people just there to welcome him. Very moving.
And they're countries that are so far off the grid, we barely even hear of them. And another gesture that was one of his final gestures was he visited the prison. He went to Regina Coeli, I believe, which is a prison in the Trastevere area of Rome, not too far from the Vatican. And it's a symbolic gesture that he does every year at Easter. And of course, with him having been unwell, we weren't sure whether he would have done, and the fact that he did meant so much to prisoners worldwide, but all marginalized people. And I think the Pope himself said, it could have been me. It could have been anyone in your position. And that awareness that he had and that he transmitted to the people who were suffering the most, I think is one of the greatest legacies that...
As you've mentioned, the around 40 of them will be there. There might be more or less, but some of them have Marta and meet with them just to...
He's passing here in front of some very
more of here. And
yes, it's remarkable also. It's the first papal funeral, can we say, with this advanced technology, digital technology that is really giving
of what's happening, and it gives you a sense of context in a way that's... And you can see all the crowds of people on either side of the street. As they wave there. And again, it's particularly poignant and touches migrants and refugees. And
I must say, in these days in which tributes have been pouring in, again...
Marta, and meet with them just to...
He's passing here in front of some very...
more of here. And
yes, it's remarkable. Hopefully that voice will be will continue to resonate.
Well, right until the very end, his final appearance on Easter Sunday, He dedicated his on Easter Sunday. He dedicated his words, his Urbi et Orbi blessing, which someone else read for him, but he dedicated it to the people suffering war, and he has.
They wave there, and again, it's particularly poignant and touches migrants and refugees and
I must say, in these days in which tributes have been pouring in, again and again I've been hearing he was a voice for those who had no voice. So hopefully that voice will continue to resonate.
Well, right.
So often for him at the general audience, which was always an occasion for him to reiterate this appeal. And Francisca, you wrote that lovely farewell that we published on the web about the Pope of Peace, which particularly, I think, resonated with you.
I have to say that one of a voice for the people in countries where
I think resonated with you.
I have to say that one of the things I learnt reading at Pope Francis's audience is that his style of being closer to the people resonated in every aspect of his pontificate. So it was very clear when up until a few years ago, the readers at the general audiences were all Monsignori, religious consecrated men who work within the Vatican walls. And Pope Francis changed that. And the readers became people like me. I'm a woman, I'm not a religious, not a consecrated woman, and ages. All kinds of different accents, and it really represents the people in the square audiences when other people are reading. It really builds that bridge. I mean, it's been a real honor reading for him. Him at audiences.
Include people in the church. You know, he's been
audiences.
Include people in the church. You know, he's been
the readers at the general audiences were all Monsignori, religious consecrated men who work within the Vatican walls.
Right in the center of the Eternal City of Rome, historic. Again, they preferred that people not follow behind. The vehicles for safety reasons, above all. Just wanted to mention, you were mentioning the Pope appeals for peace. That drew a lot of applause. People to do their utmost to bring peace in our world, and
our reading, it really builds that bridge. I mean, it's been
that brought rounds of applause from the crowds in the square.
The Pope's coffin and a real honor reading for him at audiences.
Include people in the church. You know, he's been denominations. He has want to continue.
And I can't remember them all, but I know that one of them was Ukraine, another one was Palestine, Myanmar was mentioned, and it's true, these are all countries that...
Literally right in the center of the Eternal City of Rome, historic. Again, they preferred that people not follow behind the vehicles for safety reasons, above all. Just wanted to mention, you were mentioning the Pope appeals for peace. That drew a lot of applause. People to do their utmost to bring peace in our world.
Count
the altar to the fallen soldier.
And there are people all going
places in Rome. It's the road that runs through.
Hence all the construction equipment there.
But can I say Rome is becoming
All the construction equipment there.
But can I say Rome is becoming more and more beautiful.
Spirit is present here, in a way, in greeting and blessing the crowds. I'm sure.
It's so lovely also that he wants to be, that he obviously feels Roman. He's Argentine, but he's Roman. He's the Bishop of Rome. He's said it so many times. And his devotion to the Salus Populi Romani is so significant as well.
Even his parish visits that he would make on occasion, he would go to the most remote parishes, the ones really on the outskirts of the city. The idea being to reach out to those who may have the least chance of seeing him or expecting to see him. That was his style.
And he'd go without a prepared text to engage in real conversation. I was speaking just yesterday or the day before yesterday to the international director of JRS, the Jesuit Refugee Service. And he was saying he'd pop into the Jesuit house in Rome and sit down and chat with them, and even about, you know, like events that were coming up that had to be scheduled or had to be prepared. But he said he'd invariably come open to dialogue, open to listening to what others had to say. In fact, Brother Michael Schiff said he wanted to hear what other people had to say.
Seeing these stunning images as he heads towards the Colosseum. We've just gone through the Roman Forum there. And the crowds are thick on either side. There. We're going to have some nice images of the Rome's takes place there at the Colosseum in a very symbolic and suggestive way, in remembering Good Friday and those who've suffered and died.
He actually wrote the meditations himself this year. Very often they are written by groups of people, like symbolically, like by widows or war veterans, or bring global justice to every person, every human being in the world, as we are called to recognize the inherent dignity of all.
Well, Pope Francis has often spoken of promoting an economy of peace and an economy of fratellanza, which is the word that inspires Fratelli Tutti. It means brotherhood.
Yeah, fraternity.
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 Sorry, I couldn't think of the word. An economy of fraternity, and it is bringing together a lot of the things that we've spoken about. It's bringing together the poor and the marginalized and the people suffering on the other side of the world, in our case, us being here in the Vatican, who are suffering.
Dignity of all.
Well, Pope Francis has often spoken of promoting an economy of peace and an economy of fratellanza, which is the word that inspires Fratelli Tutti. It means brotherhood.
Yeah, fraternity.
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 Sorry, I couldn't think of the word. An economy of fraternity, and it is bringing together a lot of the things that we've spoken about. It's bringing together the poor and the marginalized and the people suffering on the other side of the world, in our case, us being here in the Vatican, who are suffering war, and often they're countries who are suffering economically, and it's calling to action and to responsibility the countries that can help.
Exactly. Denouncing the great divide that there is between the rich and the poor. How often has he said all the food
Be coming up on that Via Merulana there. And here, so we're probably about 2/3 of the way there, I would say. And again, Pope Francis wished to be buried at the Basilica of St. Mary Major, and he wished to be buried next to the Salus Populi Romani icon of Mary, who is people go to pray, and Pope Francis throughout his pontificate, and in particular this icon there. There in the Basilica, and they go to pay homage to that icon that they see only that a simple space we'll be seeing shortly. Where
in the Vatican grottos, but it's actually not uncommon for a pope to ask to be buried outside the grottos. Other popes are buried in St. John Lateran, and even in
Populi Romani icon 126 times.
He went on and I also remember relating to the icon Cello. Relating to the icon Cello was a particularly poignant moment because there was a particularly poignant moment because there was a street, I'd say, of Rome. Was a street, I'd say, of Rome, which leads from just these images of Pope Francis walking down. Another moment like that, which was
to pay homage to that icon, that they see only that a simple space.
Images of Pope Francis walking down. Another moment like that, which was the Statio Orbi, where we were. It has to be open every day to. Pope Francis was just about. Open every day to. Pope Francis was just about to go out in the square, and Rome was empty. And
Crucifix of San Marcello with him.